Well, good afternoon, councillors and those people here in attendance. It's a shame to break up the jovial conversations that are going in here this morning. There is a good vibe here at Town Hall. And we do gather here today on the unceded lands of Palawa people, the original and ongoing owners, as we open today's meeting at 1 p.m. So please be seated. Noting that we do have a couple of apologies here today. We have Councillor Gibson and the Deputy Mayor. Moving forward to declarations of interest, a councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in any matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Declarations of interest. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for item 23.3.
23.3. Councillor Harris.
Declaration of interest on item 20.6.
20.6. Any other declarations today? Okay, moving to the confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting at the City of Launceston Council held on the 19th of December be confirmed as true and correct record. Moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Britton. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Council workshops at agenda item 5. 5.1 is council workshops from the 19th to the 26th of September. Recommendation that the council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for the purposes described in this public agenda. Somebody to move. Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Britton, anything to speak? Councillor Dawkins? Any comments around the table around workshops? Nothing to close? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. We have no councillors' leave of absence or community reports identified as a part of this agenda. So we move to 8, which is public question time. At 8.1, we have public questions on notice that have been published as a part of this agenda. At 8.2, we have public questions without notice. Rules and regulations, they are available and displayed upon entry. Do we have any questions from the floor? Any public questions without notice? There being none, we'll move through the agenda. We have no petitions or deputations. At 11, we sit as Planning Authority. So 11.1 is under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items in Agenda 11. Planning Authority. The first one we have is new priorities onto the local heritage list and new data sheets. Any speakers to the recommendation before we get to it? Okay, we'll move through to the recommendation that Council amend title reference at 4 Littleton Street in East Launceston. Also, it changes the title reference to those there with 58 Holbrook Street being a part of the data sheet in Invermay as well. And it also recommends to the Tasmanian Planning Commission that the draft be approved with the recommended changes. Somebody to move? Councillor Kai to move, a seconder. Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Kai, would you like to speak to the recommendation or the motion? Okay, Councillor Pentridge. Anything from the floor? Councillor Dawkins.
This represents the next stage, which has been quite lengthy, many months actually in the making. We recommend that 38 properties, 11 data sheets be sent to the Tasmanian Planning Commission for their approval. I think the community would want to see that we're engaging with the Planning Commission on the local provisions, and they want to see that we understand that some of these individual homes do have real credibility when it comes to a point in our history. Launceston obviously has many people discuss the importance of our heritage, and this is one way that City of Launceston can listen to the community, use our best advice and make these recommendations.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Any further comments? Councillor Harris.
Just a quick one to say there was a representation received about a property at 25 Glendew Street, which is opposite what was the Coates Payton's Mill. It's a brick cottage that shows a typical, workers' four-room cottage of the day, but it is very much isolated in what is now quite an industrial area. People had made comments that this did seem to be out of place and not in keeping with the rest of the streetscape and not part of an historical streetscape as such. But the reasons given should help if people take the time to read that, reasons why this property has been listed for its recommendation. And it will actually save that particular property from future demolition, I think.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
I just rise to, by you, Chair, thank council officers for the work that's been done in this area and ask a couple of questions, if I may. One being in regards to Lamont House, which is a council-owned property. I suppose, for the purposes of public education, can you explain why a council-owned property of such historical significance could have ended up in a position where it wasn't protected, I suppose? Seemingly, if it's being added to our local list now, which is a fantastic thing, and I'm sure we're not going to object to adding our own property to our own list or anything like that, but nonetheless, how did we end up in that situation? Was it previously on a state heritage list and was removed, or it was just part of our local heritage register, which was lost during the planning scheme changes?
So it actually wasn't identified previously by state or local. I, in conjunction with the building asset team, identified that it's likely Launceston's second oldest remaining property. I think it's just one of those things that we just needed to do extra research and we have, and yeah, it's a very significant place and we're really excited to have it on our list.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
you. Launceston's second oldest property. So I suppose that just highlights the work that's being done and the gaps in our heritage register. I think we quite often can all of us think that things are protected. We assume that things are protected and that they are not. So this is very necessary work, as thorough as it might have to be and as detailed as it has to be. But I certainly congratulate the council on that, and certainly the property owners as well who have acquiesced to this work being done. It is interesting to note the representations and I suppose to note also that this is not in regards to precincts but rather to individual buildings that are being added to the local register, and the particular area that was mentioned by a previous speaker is certainly one that has had light industrial developments over the past few years and probably will continue to. I've seen a couple of houses recently removed in that area. But nonetheless, it's a fine example. And I think it is deserved to be retained, if for no other reason than to remind us that that entire area once was covered by cottages not dissimilar to that one. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments? Anything to close, Councillor Kai? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. That was our only one, wasn't it? So council no longer sits as planning authority as we move through agenda item 12 and 12.1 with the mayoral announcements. 13 is councillor reports. Would anybody like to rise for a councillor report? Councillor Kai.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 21st of September, along with many of my fellow councillors, I had the incredible experience of meeting our inspirational Tasmanian Olympic and Paralympic athletes at the official Welcome Home event coordinated by the City of Launceston, the Tasmanian Government and the Australian Olympic Committee. This event was held at the Boathouse Centre where the Premier and the Mayor presented the athletes Max, Sarah, Alexandra, Jacob and Eddie with gifts from Launceston. Then we headed over to Riverbend Park for the community event where so many people were eagerly waiting. There was lots of children and adults there to meet and greet and get signatures from our amazing athletes. And my son was one of those extremely excited children. On Wednesday, the 25th of September, along with Mayor Garwood, we went to the Northern Suburbs Community Centre to celebrate our their Garden of Peace and Reflection as part of the Tamer Peace Festival, where Mayor Garwood and Alina unveiled a new peace pole. It was a wonderful gathering of people with music and dancing, a delightful lunch and lots of laughter. I also attended the Women's Health Revolution held at the Peace Festival Hub at St Luke's. It was a panel discussion about the big issues facing women's health movement with current and future women's health activists, facilitated by Jo Flanagan, CEO of Women's Health Tasmania, and Dr. Sue Mallett. There was a 1-hour workshop for Take a Minute, which is a 7-minute challenge that could help us make a connection between the people, places and activities in our life and how they boost our mental well-being. The 7-minute challenge can also be done online, and it is highly recommended to anyone who has 7 minutes to spare. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Tamer Peace Festival for organising so many great events for us to attend, celebrate and to support our wonderful and diverse community. Now, I know I've done this in the last meeting, but I would also like to remind everyone of the Heritage Sketch competition, open to all children between the age of 4 and 17. The prize, $1,400 worth of prizes to be won. Kids are now on school holidays, and this will be a perfect holiday activity to do as a family. This year's Heritage Sketch theme is We Are Champions of Our Heritage. So to enter, simply submit an artwork in any form inspired by your favourite heritage place and write a short description of your artwork and what it means to you. We hope that this competition will motivate and encourage everyone, especially young children, to be more aware of the beautiful architecture in our city. So start sketching as entries are now open, and it will close on Friday the 1st of November. And I have flyers here if anyone who has children between the age of 4 and 17 to pick up and take home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Any further councillor reports? Okay, moving forward to questions by councillors at 14.1. We don't have any that have been identified as a part of this one on notice. So councillors without notice. Any questions without notice at 14.2? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And my question is to the CEO in regards to a notice of motion that I put to council in March 2023. March 2023 in regards to council expressing an interest and a value in retaining the Patterson Street Barracks for community ownership and public use. I think at the time it was agreed that within 12 months council would make a final decision whether to develop a business case and prepare a formal proposal to submit to the Department of Defence. Now, I fully understand that we have gone through an iteration where we have a new CEO now, so I thought I would ask this question. Quite happy for it to be taken on notice. Otherwise, just to find out where we stand in regards to that process, whether there's any communication with the Defence Department or with other levels of government, and what actions we might be taking in the near future.
Sure.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Walker, for your question. I will take it on notice, just given there's obviously quite a bit of information I suspect that relates to that, but I am happy to also share that I have had preliminary discussions, only one discussion with the Coordinator General, who made it pretty evident that the Department of Defence will be more than likely disposing of that asset within the near future. So I will dig out the history and the file of that one and come back to you accordingly, as well as a follow-up to the Coordinator General.
Further questions from councillors? Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if Council has had any discussions with the state government around the Northern Hospice and how it is progressing.
Sure. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McMahon. I will take that one on notice. I certainly have not had any discussions, but that doesn't mean that any of the other staff have not, so I'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Councillor questions? Councillor Dawkins, do you mind sharing just for a moment? I just have a question here. Just if council could be updated on the current status of the bus terminal, the regional bus terminal, General Manager, if we could just have an update, please.
Thanks for the question, Mayor. I'm here from a planning perspective. So you may be aware, or probably everyone knows, that the part of Lower Charles Street outside the Harvey Norman, there's the intercity bus, terminal, where the buses come in and people get off the buses. It's not a great experience. So when we were in Adelaide in August, the Department of State Growth reached out regarding fast-tracking their development application for a new site, which I believe they're considering or already have a lease over 25 St John Street. Prior to being in touch with me, officers from DSG had already been speaking to the planning team, so I went back to them in late August, reiterating the information that's required for them to essentially lodge a DA for what they'd like to do at 25 St John Street. We've had a couple of chats since then, but really the ball is in their court in terms of providing the appropriate material for us to be able to assess and make any internal referrals. Certainly, I think it's a pretty reasonable threshold. We're not asking for anything that they're not capable of producing, but certainly from the discussions we've had, the officers of DSG, I think, are wanting a more permanent style solution that gets people out of the weather and provides some amenity. My understanding from the brief information we've been supplied is that they'll be looking to have permanent toilets inside the building as well as seating, and I think it's their intention for buses to come in and stop on the street outside this particular building. So we'd work through and be quite supportive. I've also left the door open for them to come back to us and have any further chats if they were seeking something a bit more temporary before they did a full refit out. I've certainly said come back and speak to us, but I've heard nothing further since I think August or late August or early September.
Great, thank you. Cool. Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. So no more further questions? Oh, Councillor Kai?
I was just wondering what happens now with Councillor Gibson's notice of motion to fund the Peace Festival of the $10,000?
CEO, just some clarification around meeting regulations. When a notice of motion is brought forward, it is, I believe, in the regs that the bringer forward of that is the mover. Just for clarification around that?
That is correct. Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Kai. It is the requirement of the mover of the motion to be present at the meeting to move the motion. So given Councillor Gibson is currently on leave, therefore the motion is not able to be brought forward unless another elected member would like to move a similar or the same notice of motion.
Okay, no further questions. We'll move through the agenda with no notice of motions as a part of this agenda or committee reports. We have got 17, Community and Place Network. 17.1 is the ABCDE Learning Site Reflection and Growth Future Plan. It's great to have Sarah back on board with us with this update. With the recommendation that Council receives the Learning Site Reflection and Growth Future Plan. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. I don't know whether Sarah wants to speak first. Perhaps that might be a better way to do this. No, she's shaking her head.
Well, it's all in the report there, Councillor Harris. If councillors have any questions, though, that's okay.
The ABCDE is something that's been going on for 6 years. I've been involved with a couple of them, the one at Youngtown and Kings Meadows, which is in the report. The next site will be out there at Waverley, which is an interesting suburb because unlike some of the other suburbs who have a lot of infrastructure and a lot of community, if you like, of Mowbray and Invermay, Waverley does not. And so it will be a very interesting ABCDE process to see what goes through. But Waverley is very much part of those growth areas of Launceston that we see housing growth expected along the whole face of the hill on what was once the Guns sawmill site along towards Leonards. So this is an extremely important community asset. Certainly the experience that I saw at Youngtown and in Kings Meadows was that the ABCDE did bring people together to make the community a better place, but by its very limit of only one 12-month period, there were some limitations to how it could go. And I notice in this one, we have decided not to put a time limit on the amount of time that there will be involvement at Waverley. So, yeah, it's a great process, a change from what it has been in the past. And so I look forward to see what it will bring to the whole community, but particularly the community there at Waverley.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you, and thank you to Sarah McCormack for bringing this forward. This also includes a reflection or the strategic review that we were planned. So there have been some points drawn out from that, that longer is better, and an independent self-governing model is also better, that sort of arm's length. The idea that we start looking at the way social impact or the social impact of these ABCDE learning sites and change the name. Change the name. That's a really good idea. So Lonnie Connecting Community. I know that there would have been research done and stakeholder review done in order to choose that name. So today we're here to adopt this report, that reflection, and to champion Waverley. That will be, as Councillor Alan Harris has suggested, it is a very different community. I know the school has, they're so close to Ravenswood, they're so close to other areas that receive what they see as a lot of attention, but don't believe that they've received that level of attention themselves. So this is our opportunity to thank that community for their patience and to show them that we were listening.
All right, thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Any further speakers around the table? Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, a change of name, although I did like the name Learning Sites as well, because, this is, in essence, what is the process that's going on here. It's not necessarily about changing the world overnight, but it's about learning about what the needs are and about the community learning about that as well, I suppose, as council learning about that. But nonetheless, a change in the name, or to Connecting Community is also good, because I'm sure that's, and if you look at the past reports and they're available online, bringing those connections together, and Waverley certainly is one of those areas that is, in comparison to some of the other sites, fairly devoid of any sort of centre to the suburb apart from the school. There's very little really that you can point to in that regard. So that will be interesting, I think, to find that out. I note that the assessment was done and that Lilydale was a close second there in terms of future areas in which to investigate and which to cooperate, and so that might augur well for the future for Lilydale. But again, somewhere like Lilydale, it does have a centre. It does have centralised services to some degree. I'm sure there's always more, and there'll be learnings to be had there as well. But I think this one with Waverley is probably a little bit like Youngtown. Really doesn't have much of a centre, has a school. So this just raises that awareness level, and in conjunction with council infrastructure and other future plans that council has, this is very timely, and that's been noted for Waverley, and it does help inform us as a council in decision making, but certainly informing the community itself, and a process that any community doesn't normally go through. Just a little bit of self-contemplation in order to come out the other side and realise what they have and what they require. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you very much. I quite also support the changing of the name. It's so relevant now, with our society, lack of social connectedness. And that's what we should be promoting. So the name is very relevant, I think. Learning is important, because I think these places are actually places where we can provide education to the community. I know that can always access information through internet, but there is nothing can replace direct connectedness, because that's how you can make people believe in what you say and make them go and practice what you preach. And I feel also to have all these sites in the most relevant part of the city with the low socioeconomic, that they are in great need for all these things. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Harris to close.
Thank you. No, look, not much more to add other than I hope that everyone will support this, and I do hope that the people of Waverley do get together and actually realise how much, once they come together, they can do for themselves, rather than having people coming in to do things for you, but actually what you can do for yourselves is a really important part of this Lonnie connecting community, which is, I'm sure, based on the learnings of the ABCDE learning sites that we've had. So I recommend it to everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Okay, putting it to the table then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We have nothing identified in agenda item 18, so we're moving into infrastructure and assets network. 19.1 is the Road Reserves Park and Public Reservation Occupation Policy. The recommendation is that Council endorses the Road Reserve Parks and Public Reserve Occupational Policy, noting the facts that it is based around to keep it safe and well maintained, recognised as public-owned assets, safe for pedestrians, cyclists and drivers, and that there is adequate protection for services above and below ground trees and stormwater management. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris has moved, seconded by Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a new policy that we've had to bring about, and it's an interesting one based on what is council-owned land and reserves, where people have just taken to accessing the rear of their property, perhaps because it's easier to access from the back, from the reserve, than it is from the front, and then stick their skip in there and just put all their rubbish generally all over the place. And I've seen some poor examples, unfortunately, of this as I walk around my community in Norwood and Kings Meadows and also Punchbowl. And so to me, this is a common sense policy that we have to bring some sort of order so that people have a process to go through. Because currently there was no process. People just pulled a panel out of the back fence and put the skip bin out the back, and then when the truck came to pick it up and it dug big ruts, that was obvious where we'd done it. We had no way of getting that damage repaired by the people who had done the damage. So to me, this is a common sense policy. It's not about trying to make money. It is about ensuring that people as ratepayers and property owners do the right thing by the whole community. And that's the most important part of it all. And if you look at what we have done with the road usage policy that we now see where people who are building, and a couple of examples have been with the St Luke's building, but also the medical centre down on Wellington Street, where because they're now being charged for the time that they occupy the road space, the inconvenience to the ratepayers is lessened, because generally speaking, the price of being out on the road is something of an incentive. So rather than just taking it up for the whole length of the project, they only do it while they need to. So it's really important we have these rules for the benefit of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton, anything further around the table? Councillor Harris to close, anything further? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 19.2, something that was alluded to just then by Councillor Harris is our fees and charges amendment and associated remissions of road reserves, park and public reserve occupation fees, moved by Councillor Harris, where the recommendation is that the council remove minimum fee, update the existing fees and approve the new fees associated with road occupation as published in the agenda. Somebody to second? Councillor Britton to second. So Councillor Harris has moved to speak.
Thank you. Just to, if we now have a new policy that says we have to have a fee, we have to have the accompanying article that says these are the fees. The good news is that for community and charitable organisations, council-sponsored events, and approved city activation trials, public utility providers and work on council or government-owned buildings adjacent to the road, car park or reserve are all exempt from paying a fee. So it is not intended to be punitive, but it is intended to make sure that people don't occupy the park or road reserve longer than is necessary. And so the fees, as shown, of $4 and $5 per week, either inside or outside the CBD, is what is currently being applied for those that I spoke about before on the Wellington Street and in Symmetry Street. So this is really just the pricing policy that follows our previous decision.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton, anything to add? Anything around the table? Anything further to close? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20, we have Organisational Services Network. 20.1 is the lease at the Migrant Resource Centre. Recommendation here is that council decides to lease part of the land situated at 148 Vermont Road, Mowbray, known as Heritage Forest Community Garden. It also, in the recommendation, authorises the CEO to enter into a formal lease under the following terms. The term shall be 12 months, commencing on a 5-year or as determined by the CEO. The lease amount shall be $340.34 per annum. The tenant is to be responsible for energy costs, volumetric and connection charges of water, contents insurance and other services charges, if any. The tenant shall continuously maintain and keep clear all noxious growth from the premises, hold public liability insurance for 20 mil, and the exact dimensions of the land and lease are all remaining terms to be determined by the CEO. Somebody to move. Councillor Dawkins, seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Reading this, it was a joy to see the scale in this. So we've got 41 members, 50 volleys, a $10 fee for the migrant resource members to be able to come and enjoy the community garden, $340 a year. This is all entirely appropriate for this kind of activity. And yeah, I absolutely love to see the community use our spaces in this way. It's a really fantastic part of the community heritage forest, the way it's being used now. It's just brilliant. So a good decision by council, and that ongoing kind of connectivity to the community from heritage through the soccer fields, through Inverness, you know, some of the presentation we saw today, it's really exciting for Launcestonians, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. And we, I suppose, not forget Youth Futures that did do quite a bit of work out there, I think in conjunction with the council, getting the garden beds sort of organised and things like that. Council officers, I think, back in the day, Barry Pickett. Name almost escaped me, thank you. Who did sort of really take an active interest in that particular development. And of course, Lamont House, which we mentioned a little earlier in today's meeting. Extremely historic building that council is in the process of restoring, which is not part of this particular lease. I will ask one question, if I may, and that is that first line there. Maybe it's not in the recommendation. It's the first line of the authorisation. The term shall be 12 months commencing on 5 years. I'm not quite sure what that means, but someone may be able to clarify for me.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Walker. I'm presuming it's a typo and it's 12 months or 5 years subject to the negotiations with the Migrant Resource Centre.
That would make sense. Should we amend this as we stand?
It would be useful.
It would be useful for me
if you did.
Sure. Councillor Dawkins, are you okay to, as the mover, to amend? So the word commencing, so 12 months or 5 years? Cool.
I'll second it.
Okay. All of those in favour? Do I have to do that? Yep, that's all councillors present.
I ask a question.
Is it around the amendment? Just the word change.
It shouldn't be for 5 years. We shouldn't have 1 year in there. You can't run a garden on a 1 year basis.
Yes, General Manager.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Pentridge. It's really up to the negotiations with the Migrant Resource Centre. So if they want the 5 years, that's awesome from council officers' perspective. But if they only want 12 years because of their, it allows them to negotiate with us between that period.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Walker. So as the seconder, we've now voted and that's unanimous around the amendment. So it is 12 months or 5 years, dependent on the negotiations.
Perhaps Councillor Dawkins would wish to speak to the amended motion.
No.
Okay, in which case
thank you, Councillor Dawkins.
And I shall divert my attention now to the matter at hand, clarifying that, yes, indeed, thank you to my fellow councillor, 12 months is not a lot to get a garden established, rotational crops and all that sort of thing, so makes a good point. So there we have the option now as an amendment that it is 12 months or 5 years, as determined by the Chief Executive Officer. Let's hope that he has a green finger in that regard. It is a spectacular location where it is out there, and there has been quite a substantial amount of work done, creating those garden beds and the compost and the various sort of outbuildings that are part of this lease. But it is Lamont House itself, which is sort of the jewel in the crown there, and what that can be used for in the future, is yet to be determined. But certainly I do wish the Migrant Resource Centre well, because they do really have, for a long time supported this activity in northern Tasmania, and this will be a great adjunct to the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further questions or comments from the table? Okay, a question first, Councillor Kai, and then Councillor Raza.
Just a question. When we say Migrant Resource Centre North, would that be the one
Welcome services.
rebranded to Welcome? Is that the same one, or?
Yes. It will allow us to negotiate with the entity because they still have concurrent branding.
Right, okay. So it's the same
Good
group.
question, though.
Yes,
Yeah. So just for clarification on that, the Migrant Resource Centre North relates to the rebranded Welcome Services. Sure. Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Professor Raza.
It's wonderful to see the council supporting community gardens, because that's a way for a future healthy city, especially as Australia now eats less vegetables. Well, this is the way we can promote healthy eating. I know that the council have promoted community gardens around the city. Do we know how many have we got around the city? I know there is one in Punchbowl, isn't it? Similar. So how many do we have? Because I feel if we can find more places like this, it will be great.
It's a great question, Councillor Razay. Off the top of my head, I can recollect at least another 3 on council-owned land, but there are others. Like there's the one at the Northern Suburbs Community Centre. There's one in the UTAS forecourt at Inveresk there. So there are others on private land, but.
No, I think this. Yeah. I think this is great for the council to promote how they are actually working and increasing the number of community gardens, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Further comments or questions around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Dawkins? Nothing? Cool. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20.2, we have the Occupational Licensing Act 2005, nominations to be a licensed person. The recommendation is that council nominates the following council officers who each have been appointed as permit authority of the council and each holds a building service licence to be a licensed person. Now, General Manager, I might throw at you to introduce the team from A to F.
That's a good test of my pronunciation.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't want to do it. I will start. Benjamin Pugh.
Caitlin Zandvoort, Benjamin Ransley, Janet Stonio, Shannon Douglas, and Emily Bessel. And my sincere apologies to any of them if I pronounced them.
I think that was pretty good. Excellent. Okay, so somebody to move the recommendation. Councillor Harris. Seconder, Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
Yes, it appears we have to have a licence to be a person, but nevertheless, a little bit. This is simply an administrative task for us to do, but we have someone to carry out and act as a permit authority of the council. So they are the 6 people that we've chosen, and so it really is just an administrative task for us to do today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. As the seconder, Councillor Britton.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Could you get 30 seconds on what exactly they are, a licensed person does?
Okay, General Manager.
Wow. Thank you for the question, Councillor Britton. So basically, it's working around building licences, notices to property owners who haven't complied with Building Act requirements. It's those elements in the building surveying space and the compliance space. So when we issue permits, these people will issue a building permit, and they will ensure that people are complying and issue notices if people don't.
Great. Thumbs up. Anything further? Okay, as the seconder. Questions? Councillor Kai?
Just to follow on that, so what would their powers be? I mean, it says like to carry out the functions and powers as a permit authority. What would
That is, in essence, a summary of what I just said. So they can issue the permits, they can issue notices of non-compliance. I don't have the comprehensive list in front of me of their powers, Councillor Kai, but we can certainly work through and provide that in a councillor's bulletin if that's of interest. Yep.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Pentridge? And Councillor Walker?
Look, I couldn't support this in that we've got too many rules now. And we're struggling to get our officers to return calls, to do what they have to do already. Why are we burdening them with more and more tasks? Is it really necessary, I suppose? That's the
Okay, so a question. So, General Manager, is this something that's unusual, or is this something that's on rotation as a part of the requirements?
This is a shift in the legislative requirement, and if we don't do this, it will not allow our officers to do the work that they currently do. So it's a shift in the legislative requirements around occupational licensing. You are required to make this decision to ensure that they continue to be able to do their roles as they currently do. It's not an addition to their current workload.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Walker. Yep. Did you have an answer?
And I will rise to support this. I mean, this is important work that the council does. We issue building permits. We allow people to occupy buildings based on whether they are compliant with the building code. This is just, bread and butter, nuts and bolts council work. And yes, we do have a lot of regulations, and that is essentially a large part of what council does. These people do need to be empowered. This is one of the last steps between a building being, let's say, a development application being approved and someone actually getting to the point where they get a building permit to occupy that building. And there's quite often a gap between what they said they were going to do and what they've actually done. And it's not an easy job, I'm sure, for our various officers. And, that's just one example of what goes on. But at times, they can withhold a building permit and that right to occupy until those issues have been addressed. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
I will be supporting this today.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Kai.
Just one more. C and B, they're both building compliance officers. Am I correct? Am I reading it wrong? Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Kai, they both have the same job title. They both do the same tasks for council.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Further comments or questions? Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
No, only to echo Councillor Walker's comments that this is a very important part of the process, and we do need someone to sign off. And in fact, we're only talking about it yesterday, about the requirements now that were very different to what they were many years ago when I first built my house back in the 1980s, where I occupied it for some 5 years before the then Meander, or it would have been Westbury Council, found out I was actually living there. So it is something that we do, but it does guarantee that proper support and proper standards are being maintained, which is an important part of what we do.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? Those against? Councillor Pentridge against? The other councillors in favour? The motion is carried. 20.3, we have the Launceston Central Incorporated 3-year agreement review. So the recommendation here is that Council requests officers to engage with the Launceston Central Marketing and Corporation with view to negotiate the renewal of the operational agreement and memorandum of understanding to be considered formally at a future meeting of Council, with inclusions of the following: a 3-year term, 25 to 28, with the option of an additional 3-year extension, revision of KPIs to include a combination of qualitative and quantitative measures, and any adjustments necessary to ensure that the operations of the entity continue to be aligned with the key purpose. Moved by Councillor McMahon, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. Launceston Central is an important organisation in regards to marketing and activation of our CBD. They also provide an important connection between the business community and council. It's important they are provided with security and continuity, and I will be supporting the recommendation as stated in the agenda.
Thanks, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Yes, likewise. I like to see the history there because you think about it. Well, I don't know how many of you are as old as I am, but yeah, it's true. I have a very vivid memory of a photograph of my grandmother and her sister taken on St John Street. So this was after the war, and so they had the very best clothes on. And this was like a weekly or fortnightly outing. You get your hair done, put your best clothes on, and then a street photographer will take a photo of you, and then that's like pride of place in the house. And that's what it used to be like, walking down St John Street, going to shop in the city. I'm not even sure if they had any money to buy anything. They were certainly very poor, but they looked $1 million. So somewhere along the line, around the 80s, an organisation was formed to try and kind of maintain that sense of how special shopping in the city is, you know. And then they've had to straddle kind of the digital age and the change of that mix from simply retail to retail and services, and with this big involvement from the council on the City Heart project. So it's a really interesting organisation to me, one that I've not always supported, but as I've softened and aged, I can see the incredible work that they've done to be able to really cement their place. And we know now that this organisation are actually forerunners around the country of establishing what it is to have a main street. So, you know, I am smart enough to be able to say when I was wrong, and I believe in this instance I was with this organisation, and they have my full support.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Further comments around the table? Councillor Harrison and Councillor Walker.
Yes, I stand to support this motion. City prom's a very important part of the vibrancy of our city, and I do think I can remember back in the day in 1989 when it was started, and I think Debbie Abraham might have been the very first person that they employed. Yes. Well, possibly so. But it certainly is necessary for the city to have vibrancy, and as is its financial viability going forward, hence the need for a 3x3, allowing for some CPI indexes. And it's very interesting to note that Launceston Central City is being called upon to address conferences on Main Street, on how to keep your Main Street active and invigorated. And so whilst we're often our own worst enemies, when we see an empty shop, we think the world has ended. It is nothing compared to many other main streets in mainland regional cities throughout Australia that certainly have found the lack of vibrancy that they have, and they would be very proud if they had as much as what we have here in Launceston. Doesn't mean we're not perfect. We've still got a lot of work to do, and that's why we need to have this organisation out there doing what it's doing to help bring more vibrancy into our city.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And first of all, the 3-year funding does create some certainty and continuity for business as far as Launceston Central goes. Yeah, I too have had mixed feelings, and I've, hadn't been shy about expressing those in the past. I do think that it's still an evolving field. We're learning. Launceston Central is learning. Are we ahead of the game? Are we behind? It's all those types of things. But they're essentially there to provide the core roles and responsibilities of destination marketing for Central Launceston, place activation and advocacy to ensure that Central Launceston remains competitive and marketable at a local and national level, helping to connect stakeholders and businesses and advocacy with peak organisations. So I think we all accept that there's vital roles there, It's just the tweaking of the model. And what I do note is Launceston Central are available for that adaptation as time goes on as well. And that's what I like about their approach. It has been congenial and conducive towards finding what is going to work best in our situation. So hopefully we are ahead of the curve in that regard. 3 years does give that little bit of certainty for them to really develop what they are doing and continue to do. And I think, it leads into things like tourism and event management. And, it can be strange for us funding an organisation that then advocates for businesses back to us type of thing. It's all those nature of those relationships that we're probably still sorting through. Some traders feel as though, they had more representation when they were members of the organisation. Now they're not members, they feel like they have to come directly to council rather than via that organisation. So all these things are being sorted out. I think, of course, what we all agree is we want the activation of the CBD. We want to see that this model is working and, to some extent, the proof is already in the pudding. They have done quite a number of things that have been really successful in that activation. So that's just what I'm sure we all like to see over the next 3 years, and the changing nature of retail business and responding to that. It is such a challenge for everyone, and I do, congratulate Launceston Central on the way they've gone about that and the communicative way that they've approached that. It's up to us to see the results and continue that support as we see fit. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further comments, Councillor Professor Raze.
I stand to support Launceston Central because I feel the city really need for reactivation, and they are the right sort of organisation. Most importantly, we have passionate people in this organisation desperately working hard to reactivate the city. Perhaps I would like just to ask to reflect on their previous work. The last 6 years, they have played an important role in changing the city centre. Some have worked, some haven't worked, because what we want is to make the city active again, that attract people of all ages to the city. And I think we're still far from there, but I think we have the right people to drive changes for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Further comments around the table? Councillor Kai with a question.
Can we ensure that whatever agreement is negotiated, that a copy of the negotiated agreement is presented to council for approval?
Thank you, Councillor Kai. In the recommendation, it does state that it will be coming to council before it's being endorsed, so we will have a chance to see that that document before it's adopted and goes forward to being contracted. Cool. Any other comments, questions? Anything to close? Councillor McMahon? Cool. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20.4, we have the monthly financial performance report. So the recommendation is that council notes the report outlining both capital and operational results to the period ending the 31st of August. Moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is our monthly report from our financial people telling us that good news. We had budgeted for an $800,000 deficit this part of the financial year at the end of August, but in fact we have a current surplus of 1.76 million, which is a gain of nearly 2.75 million over what we had budgeted. Some of it is explained in the report because of the state government not yet levying us about $800,000 in tip levy fees. But it might be interesting if I could hear from the General Manager as to perhaps why we seem to be a bit further in front than we were expecting, and whether that's going to change other than that one point that I brought out.
Directed to the CFO.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. So if you open the attachment, there is a breakdown of the key variances. As you'll see, revenue is ever so slightly under budget. Rates is unfavourable at the moment, but that's to be expected after we've had a full municipal revaluation, which was undertaken last year. So typically the supplementary valuations do come in a lot slower in the following months. So I'm really confident that that will even out over the next couple of months. So where we've had some fairly significant favourable variances is on the other side of the coin with our expenses. So employee benefits, which is our staffing costs, about $437,000 favourable. That is primarily due to staff vacancies across the organisation. So we're tracking at around about 50 to 60 vacancies at the moment, I believe. So there's a lot going on in the recruitment space at the moment. The primary saving that we've got at the moment is in our materials and services. So there's a number of projects that, for a variety of reasons, just haven't either gotten underway to August or we haven't spent the full allocation yet. So we do fully expect that those projects will still be undertaken. It's purely a timing issue. And as you identified, Councillor Harris, there is the state government waste levy. We simply haven't received that invoice from the state. I'm not sure if that came in September, but if it didn't, we'll simply take up an accrual. So that will even out.
Thank you for that, General Manager. I don't think there's anything more for me to say about this particular item. I need to ask my fellow councillors to support us accepting the report.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do believe this may be an initiative of our new CEO, that we do have this public-facing reportage that allows a little bit of insight for the public to see the workings on a monthly level for council financial position. Of course, there will be variances where things, anomalies will appear. Spending might not have taken place, will occur later. Bills will turn up, like all of us, at the time when you least expect it. But this gives a snapshot. I suppose that's the way to look at it, really, just a snapshot of the financial state of the organisation. I have thought at times it might be good to have an online dashboard type thing. Some organisations have that sort of magical looking live interpretation of what goes on, but it might be a whole full-time job for someone to maintain that. This is probably a good second as far as that goes, for those that are interested in those internal mechanisms and where we're at in that snapshot. A good thing, a good initiative brought to council, so we should expect to see these every month from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further comments around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Harris? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Yes, and we thank the General Manager and the CFO for, the new reporting system and the CEO for the implementation. At 20.5, we have the Code of Conduct for Councillors. The recommendation here is that Council notes the introduction of the Local Government Code of Conduct Order 2024 by the Department of Premier and Cabinet and rescinds the City of Launceston's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Somebody to move. Councillor Dawkins to move, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. This is a part of an ongoing process. It's logical that every councillor in Tasmania sits under the same code. That makes total sense. So we need to adopt that code as we order to and rescind the code that we had in place. I understand the dispute resolution policy needs to be in place in 12 months, and we need clear pathway to be able to understand what that means to us if we need to make a complaint or if a complaint's in fact made against us. I like the introduction of the public interest test. I think that was a little lacking in the past. So we've got an idea now that perhaps the conflict or the code that potentially has been breached might seem perhaps less important than others, but the public interest in that matter can be taken into consideration by the panel, or in fact the initial lawyer that will need to read that code of conduct violation or that potential violation before it's handed on to the panel. So it's entirely appropriate and something that we actually have to do.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as Councillor Dawkins said, this is something we have to do, and I was just looking to try to find a quick summary snapshot to see, as a question, as to whether there is what are the major differences between what we had as our code of conduct and what the new Tasmanian statewide code of conduct, whether there's any significant changes that is either a better or perhaps a not as good as what we had, to understand what we're giving up before we take on this one.
General Manager.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harris. There's no fundamental departures from the Code of Conduct that we already had, because Council had fundamentally adopted the Model Code of Conduct as proposed by the Local Government Office. We had a couple of minor differences just in wording around our values and those sorts of things towards the end of our code that aren't reflected in the statewide code. That's completely appropriate because they're our organisational values, not statewide values. In terms of how the wording of the code and that sort of thing, we provided some feedback to the Office of Local Government when they were drafting that, and it's consistent with the feedback that we gave at that time.
Thank you very much. That makes perfect sense, and also why we should now be supporting the rescinding of these now superfluous code of conduct that was just unique to the Council, to take the state government legislation as a new code of conduct regulations.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Further comments around the table? Councillor Dawkins, anything? Oh, Councillor Pentridge.
Look, I'm reluctant, and having had the misfortune of having a few of these things chucked, I think I'm one of the few in our council that's had those changes made against it. I think there's too many rules, and having talked to a lot of other councillors in other municipalities, my concern is that legislation like this turns around and gives too many people the opportunity to try and silence elected representatives. I personally, and I can only speak for my council, I respect my colleagues, and I haven't seen any bad behaviour, and remembering I'm looking from outside in, how they see it's their prerogative. But I don't need any more regulations. We're here to represent this community, and I think all of my colleagues have always behaved appropriately in the interest of what they're trying to do as far as the community goes. So I can't support it, but nevertheless, if others choose to, so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Walker.
Look, I think that I'll just... I'll address you, Mayor, rather than Councillor Pentridge, but I will, by you, Mayor, if I may, just make the point that, by councils being required to adopt a dispute resolution policy within 12 months of its commencement, we have an opportunity there to address some of the issues that may have been previously mentioned, whereby rather than a complaint going further down the track, that a resolution can be sort of brought about, through a robust process. I mean, this is the area where council get to say, look, let's be a little bit more robust in our approach here. Let's have a look if this is a genuine complaint, and indeed if it is, let's find a genuine solution rather than travelling further down the path of reporting somebody. The introduction of a public interest test for investigating complaints, I mean, I suppose that can work both ways, really, can't it? That it can be that, yes, there is a public interest, therefore it should be investigated further, or indeed, there's no real public interest here and there's no need to pursue this. So I suppose I'll sit down with that question, really. Is that the intended use of that public interest clause, that it could indeed, work both ways, and that we could see opportunities for, maybe not completely futile sort of complaints, or what would you call them, vexatious complaints, to be rescinded, but indeed, as a measure of whether it's in the public interest for some of these things to continue sometimes, or whether, Yeah, so there's a question there somewhere, I think. Thank you.
We won't speculate on the state government's intentions for that, but that might be a perceived personal opinion taken into that result. General Manager, I don't think we can really form a view on the intention of the CEO. Anything further? No, I think we'll just have to take that as it comes. Councillor Dawkins to close.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that information. I guess it is about information sharing, isn't it, for me? Like, we need a code of conduct. We do need to have some rules around the way that the information that we receive is shared or not shared. It's actually absolutely vital to the work of council because we receive so much information, some of which will come to fruition and some of which will not. It's really important that when that information is shared, it's shared in the appropriate way by the appropriate people so as not to in any way impair the work of anybody who's put enormous amounts of effort into some of the work that comes before us. So adopting a precautionary principle when it comes to the information received on council, to me, is a very, very wise thing to do. And that's why we have the rules, because sometimes people don't understand that.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? Those against? Councillor Pentridge against. All other councillors in favour. The motion is carried. At 20.6, we have representation at the 2024 Rail Trail Conference, 18th to the 19th of October. Noting a declared interest on this one, the recommendation is that Council approves the attendance of Councillor Harris to the Rail Trails Conference in Melbourne. Somebody to move. Councillor Britton has moved, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. The 2024 Rail Trails Conference, attracting more rail trail users and providing better experiences and facilities. Our very own Councillor Harris is a cyclist himself. He's on the Transport Committee. He's keen and passionate about this area, and in particular cycling expanding in and around Launceston. I can see it promoting a healthier Launceston, sustainable transport, helping us out in tourism, and obviously the amenity for all of our local people. I can think of no one better to go, so all good.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Councillor Palmer is the second and nothing further. Anything round the table? Councillor Walker.
Yes, I won't be supporting this recommendation today, and it's probably a rare time where I would do that. But I do feel as though there's and look, you know, certainly I appreciate the contribution of Councillor Harris to the council, his passion for cycling, but I also appreciate that in our particular instance, we're in the middle of a protracted situation in regards to the north-east rail line, which it still is a rail line at the moment, heading from Launceston to Scottsdale. I know that Dorset Council has plans, intention, in fact approval to remove those lines, and that's a highly contentious issue in northern Tasmania and in the northeast. It involves Launceston Council because Lilydale Reserve is to be the preferred destination or designated starting point of that rail trail. There is rail lines between Lilydale Reserve to Waiina, a stretch of about 7 kilometres, which includes, of course, the rail line meandering, you know, north of Lilydale, and that's all part of Launceston's municipality, yet at the moment Dorset Council has the jurisdiction over that line. So there's a lot of contention there. Launceston Council itself, in about 2018, did say that they would prefer that the rail line was not removed. That policy has not been ever rescinded. Nonetheless, we have had an application for a development of Lilydale Reserve, which has caused contention in itself, to modify and develop that area. So whilst there might be some learnings for a councillor to attend a conference that's dedicated to rail trails, and while there might be some benefits to rail trails in different parts of the country, no doubt there are also benefits to retaining public rail corridors and developing and retaining that infrastructure. And I do see it as contentious that a councillor, any councillor, would attend such a conference, which is really, I suppose, politically aligned in full support of one side of this particular discussion. So, yes, I won't be supporting this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Britton, anything to close? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? 4 are against. Councillor Pentridge?
Against.
Okay, so Councillor Pentridge and Walker against. Other councillors for. The motion is carried. Right, we are at no agenda items for 21 or 22 with CEO or late items. So we move to closed council. Somebody move that we go into closed council to discuss the following matters, which is just the confirmation of minutes, disposal of interest in land, and also the workers' commemorative Palmer, seconded by Councillor Harris. We're happy with the wording. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. We move out of closed and we take the table minutes. We'll just wait for the computers to turn over. Just with that one, is there any scope for further developments in that area? No, not so much changes, but further developments there. Because we know that Guy really wants some toilets in there and the barbecue eventually. But yeah, okay. Well, that's something. When he calls me and says it's been put through with no toilets, I can say, oh no, that's for further consideration. Yeah, but it could be a further consideration if the council brought that forward for that area. Because I've already said to him, we're transferring the stadium, we're not making a structural decision tonight. So let's give me a couple of months grace. Cool. Thank you. Okay, councillors, we've just come out of closed council and I just need somebody to please move that the table of contents is a true reflection of what was spoken about in closed council. I've got Councillor Britton as the mover and Councillor Harris as the seconder. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present, including Councillor McMahon. The motion is carried. Meeting closed at 3:03 with the next meeting to be held on the 17th of October.